In today's video, we're going to talk about Arcadia's new snake sausages called EvoRX. In a nutshell, basically what it means is you get sausages that you can feed to your snakes rather than feed them a mouse or a rat. Now there's been a bit of controversy around the launch of the product, but on this video we want to stick to the facts and the logic and look at the nutrition before we go getting emotional and overreactive. So we're going to open these up, we're going to feed them to some snakes, and as we're talking about it, we'll see if snakes actually take the sausages. Now many people got really upset. I've seen everything from this is animal abuse, you don't respect your snakes, to people straight up commenting things like go to hell. The snake community seems very upset that there is a sausage option for people who don't want to handle rodents to have a pet snake. So what I'm going to do with you, I'm going to walk you through the nutrition and the items in the sausage and then compare that to a mouse and we'll see what it looks like. Now the sausage is made out of chicken. It's actually got collagen casing from cows to actually make it that sausage exterior. They've got glycerol, which is just basically oil. It can be really good for hydration and hedging your bets against the loss of hydration. It's also pretty good for a binding agent in like icing and cakes like that. So I imagine it's simply there just for the binding of the sausage itself. They have got vegetable oil and they've got some cellulose and then some calcium and vitamins. So straight away, I saw some people that were very upset that it was chicken. However, I don't think that is a big deal at all. I feed a lot of day-old chicks to my snakes all the time. So chicken is a large part of the diet that we feed snakes all the time. The thing is we have to consider is, okay, the primary intention of a snake isn't to eat plant matter and that cellulose and the oil from vegetables. However, in the wild, snakes will eat a rodent and they will consume everything in that rodent's stomach too. In fact, we know that rattlesnakes are a key member of their ecosystem for seed dispersal, which means all the seeds and the organic matter that a rodent eats compacts in the snake, and when the snake goes around pooping, the seeds that come out on the other end go into a nice manure parcel and they actually like disperse plants around the ecosystem. So we know for a fact that snakes are eating a lot of plant matter that are in the stomachs of their prey. So I think a bit of vegetable oil and some cellulose going through a snake isn't particularly harmful, I wouldn't imagine anyway. Now the really hard thing to compare is they haven't given the whole nutritional components of the sausages, they've just given the additional nutrition, the nutritional additives, which means I only can see what they've put in rather than what the sausage plus they've put in. But if I look at some nutritional data on the actual pinky mice that we typically feed our captive snakes with captive mice, the vitamin A content in a neonatal pinky mouse, a baby mouse, might be something like 35,000, or an adult might be 600,000. But in the sausages, it is only merely 6,000 additional vitamin A. Is that because there is already 40,000 in the meat itself and they've added an extra 6,000? Who knows? I can't tell you. But what I will say is just because the rodents that we feed our snakes have that, it doesn't mean that that is the minimum requirements. The minimum requirements for vitamin A, for example, for a snake might be like 30,000 and they just get an absolute bucket load given to them. What we do know is that numbers in the hundreds of thousands of vitamin A clearly aren't causing toxicity in our captive snakes because they're not dying off. We don't know because we don't know the minimum requirements of snakes, and I can't tell you what's even in the sausage, so we'll just leave it at that. If we look at the calcium to phosphorus ratio, most vertebrates need at least 1:1, but reptiles need twice as much calcium as there is phosphorus in their diet. These sausages actually have a really good calcium to phosphorus ratio. It is, and I quote, 2.59:1, which is actually greater than the calcium to phosphorus ratio that I can calculate of the average adult mouse from this veterinary textbook extract. So in terms of calcium, they are excellent. Now where that comes into play for me is if we think about pinky mice. Pinky mice notoriously have a very poor calcium to phosphorus ratio. And in my husbandry, I'm always wanting to get a little baby snake onto fluffs and onto bigger sizes past pinky mice as fast as possible, because the calcium content in a pinky mouse, where they haven't really developed their skeleton too much, is very poor. The thing that excites me is that we can provide little pinky mouse sized packets of this sausage but with an amazing 2.59 to 1 calcium to phosphorus ratio. That is actually fantastic compared to a pinky. So in that aspect, it is infinitely better than a pinky. So for adults, nutritionally, if it does bump over the threshold of minimum for snakes that we don't really know the minimum of, then it can be a really good alternative. For pinkies, I think it's more exciting for pinkies, I think. We have to remember that baby snakes aren't just eating baby rodents and baby things in the wild. They are eating small adult animals of equivalent size that already have a fully developed skeleton and have a much better calcium to phosphorus ratio. So it's probably likely that our baby snakes aren't getting the equivalent calcium to phosphorus ratio overall in the diet as their equivalent wild baby snakes would be getting outside. So in that regard, I'm really excited about using the sausages to start baby snakes. In particular, I had a recent clutch of Mexican black king snakes. 8 out of 10 were on their third pinky smashing food straight away. 2 were really holding out on eating food for me. But what they would take is chick parts like legs and wings. Obviously they are not a nutritionally complete meal at all. But if those animals would have taken the pinky sausage instead, then that would have been an infinitely better meal for them to start on than chick wings. And arguably, you could argue it's going to be infinitely better for the others to start on it over a pinky too. That's entirely plausible. So the way that I view this is another tool in the toolbox for us as reptile keepers. I thought of an example straight away there where that alternative weird chickeny thing but actually has great adult nutrition in a pinky sized form could be amazing for getting tricky feeders to eat. I think all of us want to see more long-term use and see whether these animals get up to breeding weight and do okay and reproduce fine. If we get long-term use and they're fine, then I see it as a massive boon to the reptile industry. If we think about how many more people that could bring into keeping snakes and how much more mainstream that can take snake keeping, that only affords us better protection, that only affords us greater rights to defend ourselves against antis, there are many, many things that I think are very, very positive, and I'm very optimistic about this product. I really hope it does succeed. I don't want it to fail. The other thing to consider is, because it's minced sausages, the nutrition as a whole, it should be relatively even throughout the sausage, right? Whereas on a pinky mouse, the leg compared to the nose, compared to the gut content, have very different nutritional qualities. So if we have tiny, tiny little snakes that we can't get to eat a big pinky, but they will take one of these sausages, for example, tiny, tiny mountain king snakes, or Solomon Island ground boas where they have the tiny, tiny, tiny babies, if we can shave off a sliver of these pinky sausages and then feed that to them, that might be an amazing meal for them to start on. There are babies that sometimes won't eat, and what we will do is they will try to force feed or assist feed a mouse tail into the mouth of that king snake or that other colubrid baby snake to try and get it to eat. Well, a mouse tail nutritionally is pretty meh. These are actually quite rigid and held their form, so I sliced off a bit and I could roll it between my fingers and keep it in a really bendy. I could point it and it would push my finger and it wouldn't bend, it would actually stab my finger. Not in a sharp way, but it holds its form. So I can totally see how I can use that to assist feed a baby snake. And that is a nutritionally complete whole meal with the whole 2.5 to 1 calcium ratio with all the multivitamin into it. That is a massive, massive win for baby snakes. There are many, many examples where I can come up with why it is an amazing tool to add to the toolbox, and it's really an optimistic thing about that. And I'm pretty sure after I record this video, I'm going to come up with more. Straight away, a big concern for me is the shape of them. Yes, they equate to a weight of the prey item that I would normally feed. For example, my spotted pythons are eating large mice. However, my spotted python, even though that is the weight of food it would normally eat, I've done as an example to show you, can't really get its mouth over the end because that size prey item that it would normally eat comes to a point on its nose, and it can normally eat that prey item size and that weight really easily. So I would have to use multiple smaller items and multiple smaller sausages to equate to that meal that it would normally have. So that in turn would actually make that more expensive. So for adult snakes, animals that are a bit more grown on at a larger size, for me, I'm not sure that I'm necessarily going to use it, but baby snakes in that first few sizes, I think it's going to be a really, really good tool. And if it is nutritionally complete for people that want to have a snake but won't buy rodents, then I think that's an amazing addition to our industry. We're only going to grow the size of the industry and grow the sector and the amount of people keeping snakes, which means, like I said, the greater afforded protections and the innovation from tech and everything that comes from more money being in the industry. If you look at it from that bird's eye view and where we're going to be going forward, I am extremely optimistic about what this product could mean and do. I just hope it doesn't fail. And if Arcadia is right and they are sure of the nutrition and it's going to work to maintain adult snakes, then I think it can only be a good addition. So when everyone else is having this massive crash out and this big emotional reaction and saying ridiculous things, can we spend a bit of time looking into the nutrition, think of how it's going to be useful, and if you still don't want to use it, don't use it. Bide your time and see what everyone else's animals fare on when it's used, and then make informed decisions. You don't have to be an early adopter, but there is no need for this emotional crash out and extreme reaction. When the world is so extreme lately and it's scary how extreme people are being, can we not have a crash out over a sausage? Do we not hear how ridiculous that is? It's a fucking sausage, like, it's a fucking sausage! So in summary, my initial reaction to this product and my first impressions is I'm not offended. I think nutritionally it could work, but that remains to be seen for long-term data. For babies, for just giving them good nutrition up to the point where they start getting bigger prey items, I think I'm going to use it. And I don't think people are thinking about the creative uses they can have for this product. That I think it's just going to up-level breeding and the starting of baby snakes. Thank you all for watching. If you like these pragmatic responses to things and this way that I look into things, subscribe because that's what I do here on this channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video.